You are now listening to the Unscripted Ohio podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Grove. For all the latest Buckeyes news, analysis, reaction, and the best Ohio State community on the entire internet, head over to BuckeyeGrove.com or follow us on Twitter at Ohio State Rivals. Without any further delay, it's time to get unscripted, broadcasting from Podcast Central, a place that is not his mother's basement.
Hey, Mom! We get some meatloaf!
We promise. Here's your host, Kyle Lamb.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
Good Monday, everybody. The day train rolls right along. Welcome back to Unscripted Ohio. I am your host, Kyle Lamb. We are brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com, an affiliate of the Rivals Network. It is good to be with you back on this Monday. I've got a few things coming at you today. We're going to talk some more quarterbacks. I know we've been devoting a lot of conversation to this, but it's worth discussing. Not only is Ohio State in the midst of waiting out the Justin Fields waiver issue, whether or not he will be given a waiver by the NCAA, and of course that means whether or not he will have immediate eligibility for the 2019 season. But now it looks like Tate Martell is both feet out the door, full steam ahead on this transfer. On Sunday, he posted on his Instagram account a picture of a road sign that said Morgantown, and it looks like he was on his way to a trip to West Virginia University. And now reports are he will visit the University of Miami, that being the Florida Miami, not Miami of Ohio. But it looks like he will be visiting the Hurricanes this week, which, basically gives the indication that he is not going to wait this out. He's not going to finish the school year, or if he does, he's certainly not going to do so as a member of the Ohio State football team. So it appears safe to say now that Tate Martell, he gone. That's the best way I could put it. So we're going to talk about the quarterback situation and, what is the correct protocol here, for Ohio State or any institution in Ohio State's position. Should they be looking for other quarterbacks? Did they do the right thing going after Justin Fields? I want to get into that today because, Oklahoma is going through a similar situation. Spencer Rattler, their five-star incoming freshman for next year, is reportedly a little upset that Oklahoma is flirting with Jalen Hurts as a possible graduate transfer. So, there's the whole conundrum. Should they take another quarterback? Did they promise Rattler they would not? Are they doing the right thing even if they did make that promise, which if they did, shame on them. It's an interesting topic, and I would like to get into it. We will be getting into it with Chris Drew, actually. He is the host of the weekend sports show on WAKR 1590 in Akron. You may have listened to him a couple times. I've been on there recently, several times, actually, about a half a dozen times over the past month or so. And so he is going to join us for a change. He'll be on the podcast here in a few minutes, and we're going to get into a number of topics, including the quarterback situation. He's got some thoughts. He saw the QB1 series with both Martell and Fields. I want to ask him about that because I have not seen that yet, and it is actually on my to-watch list, but I have not gotten around to doing so just yet. So Chris Drew of WAKR will be up here in just a few minutes. Also, Buckeye Grove's own Ross Fulton will be along as we dissect and kind of preview and talk about what Ohio State may look like next year with some of the new coaching changes. Will the defense look the same? Will it be different under Greg Madison and Jeff Hafley? And, of course, the Ohio State offense, even though there are fewer changes on that side of the ball, what will it look like with Mike Gersich around and who will be calling the plays? I know Mark Givler said last week he thought there was a chance Ryan Day would make the play calls this year. I'll ask Ross about that as well as a number of things. So a lot coming up here on the show today. Real quick, man, the basketball team, Ohio State basketball. I know many of you are very disappointed in the way they are playing right now. They've got a 3-game losing streak. And look, the first game, the loss to Michigan State against the Spartans, that one, there's no reason to be really upset about that loss because Michigan State has been playing really, really well. Ohio State played them, tremendous. They played a tremendous game for about 3/4 of the way through. And then at the end, I thought, just the youth and inexperience and some of Michigan State's playmakers took over. That happens. You can't get too disappointed about that. But then Ohio State followed that up with a very poor showing out in New Jersey against Rutgers. And even though that Rutgers team is probably better than the record indicates, that's a game Ohio State needs to win. Just flat out, they need to win. And then you'd like to say that they would get right and get well and go out to Iowa and pick up a good road win, but they were unable to do that. So that's 3 losses in a row, and suddenly this Ohio State team now, there's a little bit of uneasiness creeping in because this is a really, really tough Big Ten. And even though I still believe at the end of the day this team could be a top 4 team in the Big Ten, the problem is they've got to start playing better really quickly or they're going to find themselves in a bad position. Because, look, there are so many landmines in this league, even though their resume and their profile indicates they're an NCAA tournament team, you find yourself on the wrong end of a bad losing streak in this league, and you just never know. So, look, I think this team should be in the tournament, and I think if they don't at this point, I think it would be a major disappointment. Even though they weren't predicted to do anything this year, we've seen, this team is better than their preseason prognostications from experts, okay? This is a tournament team, or at least it should be. So if they, collapse and wind up being an NIT team, I don't think there's any excuses for that. You can't justify or rationalize this team not being in the tournament after the start they made. And I know, I know that some of the teams they beat, UCLA is not a great team this year. I know Illinois is not a very good team. Creighton and Cincinnati are good road wins, but those 2 teams are having their own struggles right now. They may not be at-large teams right now. If you were to end the season today, I'm not sure they're at-large teams because of their schedules. Who knows for sure? But the point is, Ohio State, despite the schedule, they did start 12-1 for a reason in the non-conference portion of their schedule. Okay, and you can't just dismiss that as if they didn't beat anybody, because they did. Those are still good road wins they had. And they still should be a tournament team based on what we've seen. So I think the Buckeyes will get it together. I think they're just going through a funk right now. There are some offensive issues. They're limited for right now. Help is coming next year. But for this year, they are limited, okay? We just have to take this Ohio State team for what it is. And what it is a young, inexperienced team with problems in the backcourt, consistency, scoring, that sort of thing. We'll see what happens, but Ohio State basketball, a rough stretch here. They've got to get things turned around really quickly. Anyhow, we will talk some more Ohio State basketball on Friday. But for right now, let's get back into some football with Chris Drew. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I am living the dream, Kyle. Super happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So, I want to ask you something right off the bat, because you've been telling me that I need to watch QB1, both the Tate season and Justin Fields season. So without giving any spoilers to those of us who have not seen it, such as myself, I'm kind of curious your take on that. Give the capsulated view here and what you think of that series and what interest it should be of people that have not seen that yet.
Well, I would advise anyone that likes Ohio State football or Georgia football or any football to watch it. It follows 3 different high school quarterbacks in the 2 seasons. The Tate season, they had Tate, Jake Fromm, and another kid who I can't remember the name right now. And I think the idea is kind of like a super high-profile guy and then a high-profile guy and then kind of a lower-end guy. And you learn a lot about these kids because it follows them kind of through high school, at home, a little bit in the classroom, a little bit with their coaches too, and it's really insightful. It makes you feel like you know somebody. Like I feel like I knew Tate when I watched that season last year, and this season with Justin Fields, has been really, really, really eye opening. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit worried about Justin Fields. I was skeptical, not all in, not sure if I liked him or not. And then when I watched the series, it was like, oh yeah, that's my QB1, man. That's my QB1.
Now I'm curious. So you kind of gave the hint, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I guess that's why I'm asking you. Mm-hmm. You kind of, maybe hinted to me that you, after watching, Tate's version of QB1, like maybe you're not surprised by what's going on right now with this transfer. Am I reading too much into that, or is that how you feel?
Now, when I watched it the first time, I thought it was kind of funny. I really like Tate's season. When I watched it the first time, I thought it was a little bit goofy, a little bit funny, but kind of now reevaluating it, kind of as someone who's giving opinions on Ohio State football. To be honest, man, if Tate didn't commit to Ohio State, I'm not sure I would like him after watching the first season at QB1.
Yeah,
I have a gripe about Baker Mayfield and kind of the antics and the way he acts off the field, and it's kind of real similar to that.
It's a fine line, right? Because you want a quarterback with confidence, and I think to some extent, I think fans like having a cocky quarterback. It's funny because as much as Ohio State fans hated the antics of Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, when it's your own quarterback, when the last couple of seasons when Ohio State fans were thinking about Tate Martell being the future starter, I think that by the same token, they were kind of happy about the possibility of having that kind of swagger at the QB position. So there's a fine line. You want guys to be confident, maybe a little bit cocky, but you also run the risk of them, maybe talking a little too much talk and their antics being a little overboard.
Right.
And so, you kind of want that delicate balance. And I don't know where you draw the line, but, I said all along when Tate was making those comments about Fields the last few weeks, I thought that
veiled threats.
Yes, I thought it was veiled threats, and I thought it was coming from a position of weakness rather than strength. I didn't feel it was confidence, and that's why I didn't care for those comments very well, because they didn't strike me as just a guy that was being confident. They struck me as kind of some veiled jabs, really.
Right, and major fraud alert, man, saying that I'm here for my teammates. I'm not leaving this university, all this, all that, and then we obviously know the progression since then. But back to your maturity of quarterbacks and kind of like the swagger you want. After one season of Dwayne Haskins, mild-mannered, professional, I want that kind of quarterback from now on. I want my quarterback to be like Tom Brady, to be like Peyton Manning, not to be like Baker and Aaron Rodgers and Big Ben. That's just personal preference. And after watching Justin Fields, I am 100,000% team Justin. I think Tate's great, but I just can't. Whenever they cut back to Kennesaw, Georgia, I just smile. It's like I know what I'm going to get from this quarterback.
Well, and there's a growth process and a maturation process, because even Dwayne, he is more mild mannered, and I think the maybe the criticism of him the last 2 years was that he was a little too laid back and needed to be a little more assertive, because I think the quarterback position really, it's just the way it is, the nature of the position. It demands a little bit of assertiveness. You don't have to be this guy that's front and center of all the attention, but you do need to be able to lead a team in the huddle, and you need to be able to talk with poise, and your teammates need to respect what you're saying and get their attention. And I think that's something that, as the season went on this year, I think Haskins kind of matured into that guy a little bit. He's never going to be the vocal leader that takes over an entire locker room. But
he's never going to be a rah-rah guy like JT.
Yeah,
but
right.
You could see the growth in terms of the locker room respected him a lot, and it kind of the ice water in his veins type of leader, as opposed to the rah-rah, let's get fired up and heated kind of leader.
What's kind of funny, and I also think it kind of coincided by the end of the year. He had the attention of his offensive teammates for sure, and I think it kind of coincided with him being more physical and running the ball when he needed to at the end of the year and getting those tough yards. That kind
Maryland game, especially.
Yeah,
you can mark that Maryland game, and from then on, it was kind of like, okay, let's go.
I think that gave him some confidence, and I think that toughness, it was maybe the one thing that was missing from his game. And I think at the end of the year, I don't think it's an accident that his passing ability, or I shouldn't say ability, but his passing production improved when he had that toughness and confidence.
Yeah, two huge leaps forward. I agree, Kyle. I agree.
And so that's why a guy like Justin Fields that kind of has some of those tangibles, I think that's great for Ohio State, because he's not necessarily the brash, cocky guy, but he is confident, and he is a guy that believes in his abilities, and I think can take over a team when he needs to. I mean, it remains to be seen if he will, but I think he does possess that ability.
Yeah, and I think he's already a little bit more of a vocal leader than Dwayne was coming out of high school. But he does kind of give that same kind of confident, quiet leadership that is a little bit different than the Baker Mayfields and the Tates that have the real rah. I think there's almost a sense of comfort though when guys that have the quiet confidence run the huddle. as opposed to like a sense of like fiery urgency that can lead to things being forced. Just reading into just body language and kind of what I like from a quarterback. I like the quiet confidence.
Tate is now, as we speak, he was, by his own Instagram account on his way apparently to a visit at West Virginia. And, now it sounds like he will go from there to a visit this week at Miami. And those are the two of the schools that I mentioned to you when you asked me the other day. So obviously I'm not surprised by that. But so it does look like Tate is all in on this. I don't think there's, now that he's taking visits, I don't think there's any going back on this. I think he's out the door. Which leaves Ohio State in an interesting position. And
it took more visits than Justin Fields.
Yeah, that's right. That's the funny irony of this. But that begs the question, though. Ohio State now is in a position where it has to look for another quarterback, and I understand that Tate is leaving because Justin Fields came to Ohio State. But the funny thing is, I said all along, I thought the Tate Martell nuptials with Ohio State were going to end the very minute that Justin Fields said, "I do," and that's what happened. But it's an interesting question though, because it leads us to another issue. It's like, what should Ohio State's role, or any school for that matter, what is their obligation to catering to a quarterback when they know they need another quarterback position? Like, what's your thoughts on this? Because I think we're seeing it with Oklahoma, and we can get into that position or that discussion here in a second. But I'm curious what you think Ohio State should do or should have done in that situation.
I think they did the right thing. I think that Ryan Day felt like if he could upgrade, I'm sure they weighed the odds of Tate leaving. But even if Tate stayed, and they didn't get Justin, that's still three quarterbacks. They needed a fourth quarterback regardless. So it's Ryan Day's job to put the university in a situation where they can win and give the team put the team in the best position to win. And if that means upgrading the quarterback position and then searching for a quarterback outside, then do it. Like I don't have any issues with it. But I think on the flip side, Tate and them, if they are serious about playing for Ohio State, they have to understand they need to compete. And Tate, I thought he was serious about competing, and he obviously wasn't. Universities shouldn't get to the point where they're just handing jobs over, though, is what I think. They should not promising playing time and promising starting jobs, because that's kind of when you run into the issue of what's more important.
Yeah, and so the Oklahoma situation is fascinating to me, because now
really weird to me too. Really, really weird.
Yeah, so you got a situation where Oklahoma, according to Spencer Rattler, and for those that don't know who Spencer Rattler is, he's basically the top quarterback in the country this year. A 5-star quarterback from Arizona, signed with Oklahoma. He is saying that Oklahoma told him they would not be taking another quarterback in this class, as in either a freshman or a transfer on the transfer market. And he made those comments a few weeks ago when the Justin Fields rumors first came out. And that was interesting because, we thought if there was going to be any competition for Fields for Ohio State, it might be Oklahoma. It turns out Oklahoma wasn't really involved with Fields. I don't think it mattered because I think Fields was picking at Ohio State anyway. But this now is gone to another interesting scenario, because now Oklahoma is apparently chasing after Jalen Hurts, and they are interested in him. And so the problem is Oklahoma's had a couple quarterback transfers, and Kyler Murray is out the door, so they need another quarterback desperately. So let's say for a second that Rattler was told they would take another quarterback. Shame on Oklahoma for making that promise if they did.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, even if they did say that, what are they to do now? Because they obviously need a quarterback, and I don't think it's good to rely on a true freshman anyhow. So I think they're in the right for taking Jalen Hurts if he's willing to come.
Right. And when they made the initial comment, my guess is that they felt like Austin Kendall would not enter the transfer portal, because he's in the transfer portal right now.
Yeah, he's in there as of Friday, I believe.
Yeah, if you're Spencer, you have to understand that they're not just going to go into the season with 2 scholarship quarterbacks.
Yeah,
they're going to have to add one.
Yeah,
so that's kind of foolish of him. And Oklahoma, it's funny that they didn't really want to make a run at Justin Fields. I wonder if they contacted him and he kind of just told him, I'm really set on Ohio State. I want to go to Ohio State. Kind of shut that door. So then kind of Lincoln Riley could reassure Spencer that they weren't going to bring him in. And then I don't think they expected Austin to jump into the transfer portal. And regardless, I like my quarterbacks to redshirt year one.
I
That's just what I like.
completely agree, and that's been my stance. Like a lot of people are pointing to the success of Trevor Lawrence. Yes,
Tua Tagovailoa, Jake Fromm, but I want my quarterback to redshirt year one.
You know what's crazy is there's a lot of examples the last couple years, but these are, I mean, it's just crazy that we've had 3 really isolated examples of this happening in the last couple years, because this is not normal. This really isn't
not normal at all.
It really isn't. I mean, even Trevor Lawrence didn't win the job. They didn't count on Trevor Lawrence being the starting quarterback this year. It just happened. Kelly Bryant started the year as the starter, and it became obvious.
Played poorly.
Yeah, he played poorly, and it became obvious that they needed to ride Trevor Lawrence and ride his talent, because Bryant just was not playing well. And it worked out for them. They got a national championship because of it. But it's not like they went into the season saying, oh, yeah, we're going to rely on this true freshman because we believe in him. That wasn't the case. And,
right. Same deal with Tua Tagovailoa last year. It was kind of, he was getting mop-up duty. And then when Jalen Hurts struggled, national title game, I mean, it's basically Tua basically took a redshirt year last year.
Yes, and people got to remember, they were down 10-0 in that game. It was, at that point, do or die. It's the national championship game. They felt that in that particular game, Jalen Hurts was not going to come back and win. They had to make that decision because you're not going to win the title if you don't make a change. That was their estimation. So it's not even like that they trusted Tagovailoa in that situation. They just felt like they had to make a change in that moment. It's not like he won the job early in the year.
And the Jacob Eason case was a case of Jacob getting injured.
That's right.
And I would argue that if Jacob Eason never got injured, we wouldn't have seen Jake Fromm probably ever.
I agree. That's a very good possibility.
I think if Jacob Eason is healthy, I think that they bring in Justin Fields, and Justin Fields is the replacement for Eason when Eason goes off to the NFL.
I agree completely, and that's why I think if I'm Oklahoma, if I'm Lincoln Riley, and I'm obviously not, Lincoln obviously has a better track record than I do at these things. But if I'm him, I would be chasing Jalen Hurts because I want the senior quarterback that's 26-2 as a starter over the true freshman. I don't care whatever the credentials are of the 5-star, whatever his reputation is, whatever his talent or potential level is. I still want the senior quarterback that has proven it at this level. And I just would not go into a season having to rely on a true freshman if I can avoid it.
Right. When you do that, you run into a ugly situation. What they had out in USC with Daniel.
Yeah, that's right. JT Daniel.
He was the number one quarterback in the class ahead of Spencer for this class, but he reclassified, and that's why he was in college last year.
Yeah, and he showed flashes, but I mean, at the end of the year, he got benched just because they couldn't rely on him. They were hoping to, they tried, and it just didn't work out that way. I'm kind of curious. So, you've been geeking out over Justin Fields.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the quarterback situation nationally is really crazy with all the great young quarterback we've seen the last 2 years. I mean, it's I don't think I've seen college football with this much quarterbacking talent at one time. And I don't know when the last year I would compare it to, but it's been a while. It's impressive the number of really good quarterbacks there are right now. I'm curious, long term, if you're an NFL executive, who are you taking? Who are you betting on the most out of all these quarterbacks that we're talking about? Whether it's Tagovailoa or Trevor Lawrence or Dwayne Haskins or Justin Fields, who are you taking long term if you're an executive?
It's funny. I think I'm going to the draft this year as a side note because I want to see Dwayne get drafted, and I think that long term, I'm trying to put all my biases aside. I would bet on Dwayne first, and then Trevor second. And my little side note is that we have not seen a full season of Justin Fields because I think he could quickly jump both of those guys. Haskins won. I think Haskins is the smartest of the group. When I watch him break down film study and when I watch him go through progressions, and I trust his quarterback coach Quincy Avery, and he just seems like he has every single tool. And if I'm an NFL executive, I like the intelligence. I like the fact that he's been mentored by NFL players since I think 8th grade, and even talked coverages forever and argued with coverages with Sean Springs. That's my guy. That's my QB1. I think that he would have been at the top of the list last year, definitely the top this year. I think if he has 2 years of college experience, I think it kind of puts together all debate of who QB1 is, even if Herbert was in this class. So I would go Haskins, Lawrence, and then I don't know after that. I feel like there's a major drop off. I don't trust Tua. He takes too many hits. He takes too many risks. He has a kind of a slower delivery than the other two, and not as much arm pop. And I think he holds onto the ball a little bit too much. I don't trust him. I don't see Russell Wilson like a whole bunch of other people see. But it would start with Haskins and then go to Trevor underneath next.
Yeah, it's interesting too. His star kind of dimmed at the end of the season with the dreadful performance against Georgia, and he really did not play very well in the national title game. I mean, he wasn't terrible outside of a couple that one pick that he had, the pick six in the first quarter. That was bad, but I mean, outside of that, he wasn't terrible in the championship game, but he did not really do much to help his team win either. So his star dimmed a little bit at the end. I agree with the order. I think right now maybe I would bet Lawrence 1 and Haskins 2, but I think those two are interchangeable. Fields I think could be in that group, but obviously I need to see it first. But I'm not seeing it with Herbert. That's the one thing. I've watched him a couple times this year, and other than his arm and just looking like a prototypical NFL pocket passer, I don't get it with him. I watched him.
Herbert has been largely disappointing to me.
Yeah,
I said it at the beginning of the year. He just isn't that great. He's not as accurate as like when you read about him. It's like he's super accurate, 6'6" cannon form arm, all the tools, and when he doesn't seem that accurate to me.
He completed I think 59% of his passes this year. So I mean,
with one of the best receivers in the country.
Yeah, the super accuracy it didn't show through with his final numbers.
Not at all.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. You kind of asked me this on the Weekend Sports Show on WAKR, and I'm gonna flip this to you. So how are you feeling about Ryan Day right now, and what did you expect going in, and how are you feeling about it now?
I expected a super offensive-minded guy that was gaining street cred, would get all the weapons on offense, and they would kind of push forward quietly and surprise a lot of people. And what I got was gangster Ryan Day, rosy cheeks, and he's a killer, and he's not satisfied with just winning the Big Ten. He wants it all, and I think he put the whole nation on notice that this isn't Urban Meyer. We're not taking anything easy. Like, he's young. He's going to bring the intensity. And if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I'm leaving the NFL because I'm very afraid that I won't ever beat Ohio State. And it's okay to not beat Urban Meyer. It's not okay to not beat Ryan Day.
My guys Corey and Johnny, who run the Scarlet and Great podcast, are going to get you for using their material because they did a segment on the rosy cheeked assassin. So
my bad, Corey. I'll pay you guys royalties, whatever you guys need.
Yeah, I don't think there are any lawsuits coming or anything, so you don't need to be too afraid. But it'll be really interesting. So we talked a little bit about, Nick asked me the question on Saturday. What are the differences between the Luke Fickell era, the first year, when he took over as interim coach for Ohio State, and Ryan Day taking over? But I really feel like the great thing that Ryan has in his favor, besides the experience now of being on the sideline and taking over the team already, is he's got a lot of talent. I mean, the very fact that he's probably going to go into the season with Justin Fields at quarterback and all that receiving talent coming in and coming back, I think there are just so many advantages at his disposal, and it's kind of nice because if there would have been a drop-off in a normal season, he's got all this personnel at his disposal. I think really gives him a leg up.
And I think you're going to see the full Ryan Day offense for a full year, like totally unleashed. I think last year when Urban Meyer got there, he kind of wanted to emphasize the run game, and kind of pass off the run. With Ryan Day, I get the feel that he wants to run off the pass game. So I can't see this ever slowing down, at least in the foreseeable future. There's too many weapons at Ryan Day's disposal. I think he's going to get really, really creative. I expect to see Justin Fields in New York. I know I'm kind of been conducting the hype train. And I expect Garrett Wilson to have an immediate impact. They just have so many weapons, Kyle. Like I don't see any weaknesses on offense.
Well, KJ Hill,
offensive line is a question mark, but outside of that, I just can't see it.
KJ Hill returning for them was huge because now you've got Austin Mack coming back off of injury. You've got Ben Victor back. Maybe he takes a step forward. KJ Hill, I think, has a chance to be that stabilizing force. The guy that if it's 3rd and 8, who do you look for? I think based on last season, I think it's KJ Hill, and having that weapon along with adding in guys like Cameron Babb and Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams and all those guys, I think that is huge for Ohio State's offense.
Right, and my saying about receivers is, you have a real staple of an offense when your security blanket is also a home run hitter. I think KJ Hill is close to a home run hitter. He at least hits a lot of doubles.
Yeah, he's definitely a doubles hitter. It'll be interesting. I think you hit the nail on the head. I really don't think the offense is going to take a step back anytime in the near future. I think that he's got a chance to become QBU, and this is really premature because they got to sustain it for a lot longer than they have. But I'm just saying, I think he's got that kind of reputation. He's got the momentum being built that they could turn into that type of offensive system where every quarterback coach in the country is saying, yeah, go play for that guy. And I think they've got –
I would agree.
And I think with the receiver momentum on top of that, I think that it could be the perfect storm offensively. So it's going to come down to the offensive line. And then, of course, can they return? I think in this day and age, the paradigm has to change for what constitutes a championship defense because offenses just completely have an advantage now. Look at the national championship game, and Clemson and Alabama put up a ton of yards. I think that is where we are at in college football. So when I say a return to the silver bullet defense, I'm saying that with the asterisk by it that I think the silver bullet defense, as it can be in this day and age, is not going to be the same as what Ohio State won a national title with in 2002, by completely shutting down a historic, Miami offense. So,
right. But I think in today's era, I think you need a pass rush and takeaways. Like bend, not break. You need pass rush, takeaways, red zone defense. You're not going to get the defense back in 2002 or just 3 and out. You're not going to do that to teams.
You're not going to win with trestle ball in this day and age. You're just not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No trestle ball in this era.
I mean, you can't say in this day and age, the punt's the most important play in football. Maybe that was true when Tressel was around, but I think it has changed, and you can't rely on a punter. I mean, don't get me wrong. We saw from Drew Chrisman against Michigan State. It is great when you have a situation where in that type of game you can completely change the complexion with that type of punting performance. It's good to have. You want to emphasize it, but you can't go into a game saying, we're going to win this by just punting the ball and getting teams pinned deep with field position because that's just not very, very likely in this day and age.
Right, especially there's too many explosive athletes these days anyway. I want to go back kind of to your QBU point. I know you said it was a little bit premature, but I think the move from Tate as our next quarterback to Justin Fields as our next quarterback has kind of laid down the groundwork for quarterbacks. I know that there's been a place for your 5'10" runaround guys in the NFL, but I think NFL GMs and execs are all going to look at these prototypical guys, and I think they're going to start looking in Ryan Day's direction. Fields, Baldwin, Miller, after Haskins, I think goes to the league and is really successful. I think that they're going to get to the point where they will have their pick of pro style quarterbacks every year coming in.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's where this is heading. I really do. I mean, they've already got Haskins is going out to the NFL. He's going to probably be the number one quarterback taken.
He'll be the sixth. Like I said before, he'll be the sixth pick at the latest.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, that's definitely what I'm thinking as well. I mean, so they've got that coming in, and then from there they're going to have Jack Miller after Fields, and then who knows from there on out. Mm-hmm. But so Chris, we're going to wrap it up. So if you would tell our Unscripted Ohio listeners where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at the Chris Drew, between the and the Chris, and also between the Chris and the Drew. Also, I'm on WAKR every Saturday after the Ohio State's either basketball or football game. So come check me out there, and then I'll probably have you on again really soon, Kyle.
Yeah, for those that have not been paying attention, I've been on a lot of Saturdays, so there's a good chance that on a Saturday afternoon near you will be able to catch me on WAKR, so that should be a lot of fun. Well, Chris, this was great. I appreciate you catching up, and I'm sure we will talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. This was a blast.
Ross Fulton is here with his whiteboard to break down what the Buckeyes and their opponents are doing on the field. Can't see the whiteboard? Close your eyes and imagine really hard. It's time to go inside the X's and O's with Ross.
Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
All right, I'm with Ross now. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty because I have some questions, and there are a lot of things that actually not a lot, but there are some questions I have about defensive scheme. So Ross, first of all, how you doing? Before I jump right in the oven here, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. It's been a hectic last couple of weeks, hasn't it? I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. It's like I think this has probably been the craziest pre-bowl and post-bowl Ohio State I don't know, a couple of weeks I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as much as I can remember. I mean, I feel like every day it's something new.
It really is. So here's the crux. I'm curious. The biggest question I get, and I got it again over the weekend when I was on WAKR in Akron. What is the defense going to be like in your opinion? What compare and contrast from your knowledge of Greg Madison's defenses in the past? What should Ohio State fans look for as far as defensive scheme going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's degrees of unknown involved because he hasn't been a coordinator in 4 years or so. So, and you don't know quite how he's going to mesh with Hafley, and so in terms of coverages, I feel probably most confident thinking that they will use a 4-3 under front. It might be a 4-2-5, depending. One of the advantages of that is that what would be the Sam or outside linebacker can easily be translated into a nickelback or some variation of thereof of a hybrid type player. That's not all that different than what Ohio State's done this year, under Schiano. It's a little less clear to me on coverage, partially because Greg Madison has run a variety of different things. He has a long career, and so things change. Partially because he's always been willing to change up coverages, and partially because again, he's come from one school, and Hafley has been the last couple of years with the 49ers. They've been running similar to what the Seattle Seahawks do with pattern matching cover 3, which is sort of Nick Saban's thing. Madison's done quarter half. He's done all kinds of cover 1. So I think that remains to be seen a little bit what they do. I do feel more comfortable saying that I think that Ohio State will vary their coverages a lot more than they did. Greg Schiano is pretty much almost exclusively playing either cover 4 or cover 1. I think you'll see more variety. And then, Madison, his ideal, I think, is to stop the run, force a team in third and long, and then use a variety of blitz packages.
It seems like, I'm curious if you have the same perception. It feels as if Ryan Day is going into this, planning on being in charge of his offense. And I think he probably, in an ideal world, wants to turn over the defense to Madison and Hafley and say, this is your baby, take care of it. Obviously, there will be some oversight with personnel and, just the program as a whole. But I almost feel like Day wants them to be in charge of the scheme entirely and let them handle that. Do you get that same vibe, from what we've seen so far?
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, Urban Meyer wanted that too. I mean, it wasn't always possible when things weren't going well. But, yeah, I mean, I still feel like the Madison hire is a little bit out of left field. But I think it makes sense in the sense that he has a lot of experience to be essentially in charge of the defense. And it adds some stability. I mean, I think that Greg Schiano, part of the issue was he was pretty obviously and transparently looking for his next job. And so that obviously adds some instability. So now you have someone who I would imagine would be here for a few more years and then before he retires. And then you have a younger person in place to sort of learn from him and pick up the ropes in a transition. But yeah, I think back to your original question, I think ideally Ryan Day would be able to turn it over and not have to worry too much about the defense except watching them on Saturdays.
Do you think that this is a scenario where one of the reasons he was able and willing to hire Madison with his age is, we can say you're going to be here for a year or two, and then the plan is Jeff Hafley will take over as permanent coordinator when you retire. Do you think the end game here for what Ryan Day was looking at, a guy that can come in, turn around the defense quickly with scheme, and then you have a guy in place that you trust that may be the obvious replacement in a year or two.
It could be. I'm certainly, for all I know, Madison plans to coach 5, 7, 10 more years. There's nothing really stopping him from doing that as far as I know. But I agree. I think that would be a natural transition. Obviously, in coaching, as we've seen the last couple of weeks, a plan for where a coach is going to be is as good as the paper it's written on. But I think that would make a lot of sense from Ryan Day's perspective.
So we talked a little bit about this last week, and because of the audio issues, obviously I did not get this up. So we're going to have this conversation again as if we did not get a chance to have it last week. So Mark and I discussed the possibility of that Ryan Day would be calling the plays. Even though Mike Yurcich will be the pass game coordinator, Kevin Wilson the run game coordinator, it might actually be Ryan Day calling the plays. How do you see that playing out?
Another good question. I'm not entirely even sure that Ryan Day was calling the plays all the time this year. It's always hard to disentangle. I think Kevin Wilson had a significant hand in it at the very least. If I had to guess, I would think that Ryan Day would probably start out calling the plays, and seeing how it goes. I think it'll be a collaborative effort. I think he said, that Yurcich is the pass game coordinator, Wilson's the run game coordinator. And so a lot of that stuff happens during the week as well as just who's calling the plays on Saturday.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I've been trying to explain about these co-coordinator situations. It's not really a matter of too many cooks in the kitchen. It just means it's a collaborative effort where they assign, you watch video of this and I'll watch video of this, and then we get together and talk about it and assign and get a game plan together. It's just kind of a collaborative effort. It's not. I think sometimes these co-coordinator titles are not really as big of a deal, I think, as people make them out to be.
No, plus it's just a way to give someone a title to sweeten the pot, so to speak, for the position. At the end of the day, one person's ultimately in charge. To take the defense, for example, I think Madison will ultimately be in charge. But I think that, again, similarly, Hafley will have a specialty of being in charge of the defensive backfield and probably have a big say in the coverage scheme.
So what do you, I think we talked about this last week, and so I want to give you another opportunity since we didn't get to air that. But what do you expect from Ohio State's offensive scheme this year? Because you've talked about how it's interesting Oklahoma State did not run the quarterback a lot. You think that's kind of aligns with what Ryan Day's philosophy is. That they'll do it some, but not a lot. And I think that's probably a breath of fresh air for those that don't want to see, Justin Fields running 20 times a game. So how do you envision the offense looking with the addition of Yurcich and, from what we've seen of Day's offense so far?
Yeah, I think it'll just build on what they did this year. I think this was a large imprint of Ryan Day, partially out of necessity. Dwayne Haskins wasn't a real run threat. I think, going back to Oklahoma State, they were, as you said, they would run the quarterback. They did some this year. Again, it just depends on personnel, but they were really very much a pro-style play-action passing team from the shotgun. So, a lot of pistol, they love throwing play-action post routes off the run. So, I think you'll see the RPOs. I think that the quarterback run will continue to be an element. But, I take the Alabama-Clemson game as a good example. Both those teams were in the shotgun. There wasn't a ton of quarterback running. They used the quarterback read to cancel out an unblocked defender, and you can use it strategically, especially in short yardage in the goal line. So it's still helpful to have someone who's mobile back there as long as you're in the shotgun. But it won't. I don't think it will be, as you said, ideally at least, the quarterback running 20 times a game like you could get with, when it was Braxton Miller or J.T. Barrett.
Yeah, I feel like it'll probably fall in line somewhere in between the 20 times we saw from J.T. Barrett some games and, more than the once or twice we saw it from Dwayne Haskins. I'm guessing probably in a normal game we might see it 5, 6, 7 times. Do you think that's probably a good ballpark?
Yeah, obviously college football, it's kind of goofy since they count. Sacks count as rush attempts, and so do scrambles. So a lot of, stats can get kind of skewed from what actually was called in terms of run pass. But yeah, I mean, I think to me, again, if there's a spectrum of when you're working the spread from a quarterback who's primarily a run first at one extreme to a guy, I mean, Haskins pushed it to the limit. I mean, I think that there were times where they struggled this year without being able to at least threaten with the quarterback. You know, I think having that threat alone adds something. And so obviously Justin Fields can bring that level to it.
Well, Ross, one last question rhetorically I want to ask you. Are you disappointed that we are apparently not going to have those heated discussions about the quarterback battle in the spring?
Well, it's great for clicks and podcasting, right?
It sure is. It would, I definitely, was not complaining about it last year when there was all the Burrow-Haskins discussions going on, but I'm kind of disappointed, maybe for nostalgic reasons, we are not going to have that conversation this spring.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, who knows whether Martell will stay through the spring? I mean, it would have been kind of an odd situation, anyways. I mean, they do have Fields is a very good runner, and I think we'll see more of it especially when he's a younger quarterback and still has to develop as a passer. But I definitely think they're moving towards more of a pro style from the shotgun, if you will. And so it makes it a little bit more aligned in terms of what the quarterback can do, I guess, without that competition, shall we say.
Well, it should be a lot of fun. It will certainly be interesting to follow. And God forbid if Justin Fields does not get his waiver, then we will have some interesting conversations to have in a much different way. But I don't think that's going to be a scenario that plays out. We will find out soon.
It's certainly not something I think that should keep people up at night worrying.
Yeah, I would not worry too much about it. It is the ultimate disaster plan, but I don't think that's very likely. So
yeah, I would say that between that decision, obviously by Ryan Day, and then the decision to hire Madison are by far the two most consequential things he's done thus far in his early career. Because as we were talking about, I mean, when you're entrusting one side of the ball to assistants, you're putting you're counting on them quite a bit. But the one good thing is Madison always has been a very focused on fundamentals, and his teams are usually pretty sound in their execution, which is definitely something that there were areas that was lacking on the Ohio State defense this year. So that should be a step in the right direction. Well,
interesting times we are living in for Ohio State football. Ross Fulton, you can catch his analysis on BuckeyeGrove.com and, of course, on Twitter at @RossRFulton. Ross, always appreciate it, my man, and we'll be back with you again soon.
Thanks, pal. Happy to do it.
All right, folks, that is going to wrap it up for Unscripted Ohio for today. Be sure to check out Corey Thompson and Johnny Lunsford as they bring you the Scarlet and Great podcast that will show up here on the Unscripted Ohio Network on Wednesday. Be sure to give them a listen if you have not done so already. I promise you will not be disappointed. Of course, we will be back on Friday with our normal time. And if there are any other breaking news items worth going over, of course, we have special edition podcasts throughout the week occasionally. But we will be back at our normal bat time, our normal bat channel here on the Unscripted Ohio Network on Friday. Check us out every Monday and Friday here on BuckeyeGrove.com. You can catch me on Twitter at KYLam8, and you can catch the podcast also on your archive of choice, that being SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. That will do it for me. As I said, be sure to give Corey and Johnny a listen on Wednesday on the Scarlet and Great podcast, and I will be back on Friday. Have a great week, everyone. Go Birds.
You can get new episodes of Unscripted Ohio on Mondays and Fridays exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Ohio State.